So here's a plausible scenario. Republican voters in the key early states like Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, they end up being split next year. They're unable to decide whether a member of the GOP establishment or a younger, more conservative upstart would be the best nominee to win back the White House for them. So let's say those two competing frontrunners end up being Jeb Bush on the establishment side and Marco Rubio on the insurgent side. Now, if that happens, it means that sometime in mid-March of next year, Bush and Rubio could be looking to the Florida primary as the contest that decisively catapults one of them into the lead and ends the other's chances of winning the White House. Now, not only do Bush and Rubio both call the state of Florida home, they also both call the city of Miami home. In fact, they live 3 miles apart from each other. So we decided that we would travel down to Miami this week and talk to voters on the ground there to make sense of how these two close allies, they were mentor and protege for years, how these two close allies could become rivals in the race for president.
We're in Coral Gables right now, standing in front of my house. This is an interesting place because if you go about a mile and a half that way, Jeb Bush lives there in Coral Gables. And if you go due west about a mile and a half or 2 miles, there's Marco Rubio's house on essentially the same line of latitude.
It's unlike anything we've ever seen before, and a lot of people don't know exactly how to handle it.
We have two good men.
If we wanted to be fair, would say that Jeb Bush is one of the best governors we ever had in the tradition of Bob Graham and Reuben Askew and Leroy Collins. A person who wanted to be fair to Marco Rubio would say a semi-meteoric rise. Wasn't that many years ago. He was a commissioner in the relatively small town of West Miami.
When my term expired in April of '98, Marco Rubio was the one that was elected and sat in my seat. At that moment, I thought he was entirely too young. He looked like he had just stepped out of high school. Rubio proved me wrong, and I am so happy, and I will admit it every day of my life.
I was a Democratic leader when Marco was the speaker and Jeb was the governor. So I sort of woke up every day and went to work to argue against their policies, which were some of the most severe conservative policies in the country. Although there may be a generational difference between them in age, there is absolutely no difference between them in policies.
They're two totally different experiences. Marco Rubio comes from West Miami, working class roots, working class family. Bush is a guy that was really entrenched in helping build this community from a business perspective.
I've detected kind of a lot more positive sentiment, especially from the older Cuban Americans, for Jeb than there is for Marco. There is that sense that Marco should wait his turn.
Yo estoy muy orgullosa de Marco Rubio porque es cubano igual que yo. Pero a mí me parece que todavía él está un poco joven y el que más adelante va a ir va a ser Jeb Bush.
I personally think that governors are going to have an advantage in this election because I think the American people want someone in the White House who has had experience as an executive running an organization.
I don't know much about Marco Rubio, don't know much. A little bit that I saw him, a little radical. This situation with Cuba, for instance, it's the best thing that can happen to the U.S.
I am registered as a Democrat, but I always vote for the correct person. And in this coming election, it's not Democrat or Republican, it's Rubio.
Yes, you're going to see some of us go one way and some of us go the other way. The important thing for those of us that would like to see one of them become president is no matter who wins, for us to all come together at the end.
An interesting piece. The biggest fan for Marco Rubio is the woman he beat in his first race for office. A fascinating packet there. Our thanks to producer Ann Thompson for putting that together. Up next, we're going to break down the implications of that rivalry between Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio, including whether Rubio saying things like this has anything to do with it.
But this election is not just about what laws we're going to pass. This election is a generational choice about what kind of country we will be.